David Mason, the Director of Public Health for the town of Sandwich, and today we're doing PSA number 9, second wave. And what we're going to outline today is the status of the cases, and we also have with us today our Deputy Emergency Management Director, Chip Riley, and we're going to speak to the upcoming storm season and how to handle that. But we'll start with Chief Burke with the current statistics.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Dave. As of now, 57 active cases in town. It's important to highlight since Wednesday last week, we've had 62 cases come in so far. So it's definitely been busy. Over 300 recoveries and still the 3 deaths. Hospitalizations, a total of 50 Cape residents hospitalized between Falmouth and CCH, with 11 in the ICU. The ICU breakdown is 9 at Cape Cod and 2 in Falmouth.
Very good. And we're still in the yellow at this point because of being able to pass off cases to other towns. So we'll step back to that a little later, and we'll just have a conversation about vaccines. But we're going to introduce Chip Riley and to talk about the coming storm season and how we deal with storms and the opening of shelters or not during COVID and how we handle that. So welcome, Mr. Riley.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me. We, in the Emergency Management Department, Brian Gallant and I, Brian's the director, and I talk a lot about emergency preparedness and how we can do outreach. Brian's asked me to do a little more outreach with our senior populations, with some other vulnerable populations to sort of help with emergency planning and emergency preparedness. There's some great resources online, so you don't have to pay attention too closely. We recommend 2 sites, which is ready.gov, which is the federal government site on emergency preparedness, and the Red Cross has a great one also, how to prepare for an emergency. And they'll give you checklists, ideas, and where to go, how to do things, and they're really great resources, so we recommend you see them. If you're technology challenged and don't have access to that, we can get you hard copies of some of this stuff. We do have it in town at the office. COA has it, and some other places, so we can get it to you if that's helpful. We're going to try to stay in a 40,000 foot level and really apply this to COVID, which is really what our plan is here. And you'll hear about emergency preparedness. There's 2 main themes, which is have a kit and make a plan. So in having a kit, you can go out and buy them. I have an example of one here that we have in our house, but we really recommend people, you don't need to spend a lot of money on it. A lot of the stuff you probably have at home. Do you have a first aid kit? Do you have flashlight, extra batteries? They're really pretty easy to acquire. It's more putting them together and having them know where they are and have them ready to go. And then you know what you need to get by. You know, we say, what would you take if you were going camping in the wilderness, in theory? Simple things to get by. You're not going to bring all the fixings for a lobster dinner or a 3-course meal, but there are things that you can do that's more simple and just to get by for a couple of days. So build a kit, and again, there's whole checklists online you can go through and find. And the next one is have a plan. And we say have a plan generally because there's different types of plans. You should have a family emergency plan. There are communications plans, which are important, evacuation plans if we had to leave the Cape. And then the big one we talk about is a sheltering plan. So if we're going into storm season, and we think more about power outages and cold temperatures, and what would you do if you lost power for a couple of days? Where could you go? Now, normally we would open a shelter in town. We have a regional sheltering system on Cape Cod where there are 6 regional shelters. There's a couple more than that, but 6 of the big ones, and one of them is here in Sandwich. But there's some big challenges we face now in the COVID world of opening those shelters. And so there's going to be, we may not open as frequently as we have in the past. So do you have somewhere you could go? Do you have friends, family in town? Now, we don't want a lot of people going into other residences, but you can take precautions and take some simple mitigation steps to make that easier. Because the shelter may not open, and we want people to have to get ahead of this a little bit and help us out in case we don't open it. And if we do, we have a plan. Our partners in our sheltering operations, the Red Cross, the Medical Reserve Corps, Cape Cod DART, and our county partners, we've got some plans for this, but it's a much bigger footprint. And now we're in the high school, so then we've got to deal with cleaning beforehand and afterhand, and we're taking up a much bigger footprint. So there's a lot more that goes into it. So we're really going to try to push back on opening shelters unless we absolutely have to, and that's where we need everybody's help. So again, if you back up, ready.gov, the Red Cross, how to prepare for an emergency, are a couple of great resources to look into, and feel free to reach out to us if you want hard copies of that information, and we can get it for you.
So it's in terms of, because of opening the shelters or not opening them, depending upon the situation, I mean, where would someone go to determine if we were opening in a shelter?
It's a decisions made regionally through the Regional Emergency Planning Committee. Ryan Gallant plays a big part of that. And then it comes down to the town level, and we'll publish that. We push a notification through many different outlets. The county will do it, we will do it. But again, we're really pushing back on trying not to open unless we absolutely have to, because we don't want to put 150 people in the cafeteria in the high school. It's kind of contra to what we've been trying to do to stay ahead of the virus here in town.
Understandable, and at the same time, there's going to be people that just don't want to do that either, so they're looking for alternatives. You had mentioned as far as people or friends opening up their houses. I mean, to connect the dots for people, if you had a basement or finished basement, there's a way to separate people and still offer, heat and light and shelter at that point if need be. So it's something, if people plan ahead, they can take the steps to think about.
Absolutely. And, again, it's part of the planning package, which we have a plan in our house. If my mother or my sister had to come and stay with us, we have a separate bedroom, we have a separate bathroom. We can sort of isolate within our house. We recognize they have to come, but we're protecting everybody, and that's important.
Now, because we have our residents out on the shoreline too, and that's been impacted as far, they leave during high floods and everything else. I mean, you've been involved in that, Chief Burke. Those calls as far as anticipating that weather to sheltering, I suppose hotels.
Yep.
That they could look at also. And then as far as, how do you handle the calls that you get, Chief?
So depending on, what the tide situation is, certain parts of town we can't get to. So we give them a heads up and basically say, hey, as of 6 p.m., or whatever the time that we put down, we're not coming to get you. And a lot of people have these are second homes. Recommend staying in your first home if that's off Cape. But again, we take it on a risk analysis basis. Is it worthwhile to try to put a $500,000 fire vehicle with personnel to try to extract these people? And it's all about communication. So the more and early we can communicate to people, hopefully it'll eliminate those situations.
Just thinking, I know, we've had, with the emptying out of cities, we have more people utilizing their second homes. You just spoke to that fact. As far as, so do you think we have more people out on those shoreline properties at this point, this time of year? So they, forewarned, they need a plan based on what weather we may anticipate at this point, because you're not showing up at a certain time.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else that you'd like to add to that at all?
Well, we do, through our partners of the Red Cross, we do have a backup plan for small groups of people who get stuck. Once we get to sort of our activation level or our monitoring level for big storms, the Red Cross is a great partner in that. We can do some hotel rooms if necessary, but there is a process to that. So we'd like to try to get people ahead of that so we don't have to do it.
And pets are always a question that come up.
Pets are welcome in the shelter. We have Cape Cod Dart is a great partner we have, and our shelters are all pet friendly. We don't want people not to come if we have to open a shelter because of the pets. So you're not bringing them into the shelter with you. We have a separate containment area where they're maintained. Unless you have a service animal, then we isolate the pets. But bring them with you. There's a process for that, and our partners are really good at it.
Now, in the past, too, when you've opened the shelters, as far as you do provide some level of food, I mean, is the rumor true that lobster rolls are part of that?
No, only for special guests.
Okay, very good. So,
Like you, Mason.
Okay, well, I just want to plan my lunch schedule, that's all. So but I mean, should people bring food with them?
Well, that's part of having a kit. So, you what would you, when you come to a shelter, you should bring a bag with you with some things that you might need for a couple of days. Toiletries help, some snacks, some food, some playing cards. And we have some of this stuff in limited availability. And food and water and basic necessities were brought in through our partners in the Red Cross and the MRC are big with that. And we do have some kits for kids, and we try to provide that. And we have 2 shelter managers who have done this in the past in town, Lois Wack and Heather Gallant, who are outstanding in sort of overseeing this. They're true professionals who've been doing it for a long time and really know the ins and the outs of it.
Okay, so I guess then to sum it up is, 1, to have a bug-out kit.
Yep.
Ready to go, have a plan where you should go, because you do not depend right now on the shelters being open
That's correct.
at this point.
Unless it's really, really,
Unless we
major
reach
event.
dire straits issue, you should have alternative plans at this point.
Yes.
Okay, anything else, Chief?
Just add medications.
Medications.
Bring your meds with you. That's important also.
Very good. All right. So, well, thank you, Chip, for that information. And then, again, information is found on the websites that Chip spoke to also. So with that, let's just have a quick talk about our COVID vaccine, where we stand with that, and just to give an update to the people as far as the state has adjusted some of the phasing relative to the priorities within the phasing, and we can speak to that. Do you want to initiate where we're at this point?
Yeah, so for first responders, I think the article was in the paper this morning, we are running a regional site, Upper Cape. So we're handling Joint Base, Mashpee, Bourne, Falmouth, and Sandwich over a 3-day period next week. I think it's important to emphasize we ask people do not show up at the Human Services Building. The vaccine's going to be kept off-site. It'll be delivered the morning of when we start. Security will be tight. We have a solid plan. We're going to push through close to 300 3 days. And it's a good dry run for, again, as we move forward in the future. It is not to say that that site is going to be the vaccination site for the rest of the year. Once the weather gets better, as you all remember from September, October, the flu clinic, we did that for that reason, to replicate how we would distribute the vaccine. So we're going to pivot hopefully back to that when the weather gets a little nicer here in April and May.
So with police and fire being there, obviously, then the security will be pretty tight. So without the required credentials, you're not getting in.
Getting in. Yeah.
So, we'll emphasize as far as phase 1 in order of priority, clinical and non-clinical healthcare workers, and they're being taken care of by their facilities where they work. Long-term care facilities for rest homes and assisted living, they're being addressed through a federal program relative partnership with pharmacies.
Yep, CVS and Walgreens. Yep.
Okay, the first responders, which we will be addressing here, congregate care settings, including corrections and shelters. Their managers are addressing that through their the state and their providers. And then home health care workers and healthcare workers doing non-COVID facing, that is all through their management that they're addressing. At this time, phase 2 will be the age group of they've prioritized age groups 75 and older will be in phase 2. Now, keep in mind, nothing has been identified yet of how the state will want us to address providing vaccinations, meaning the venue for this has not been identified. They've just identified the priorities. So that is not until phase 2, which is in February or April. I mean, as Chief spoke to the fact that there is the possibility that we may be a provider, but we do not know that as of yet.
Correct.
So we are not taking names, we're not taking reservations, or setting appointments for anyone at this point for phase 2, because we're not sure how the state wants to provide the vaccine and the venue by which that will be provided. Is that?
Yep, and I think it's important to let all of our residents know that, we're diligently planning and we have all kinds of scenarios, but until the state basically gives us the green light, you're right, Dave, we may be sitting in a spot where we are not giving the vaccine to 75 and older at some type of regional site. But I want our residents to know that we're constantly planning and looking at
Right.
the next phase.
Yep.
We're already looking at 2 and 3 right now because we have a solid plan for the first responders. So as I told my people this morning, this is going to be an 8 or 9 month long endeavor, minimal, to be able to push this out. And remember, there's only one public health nurse. I think people need to remember that also. There's not an army coming to assist. We're looking at what the options are, and that's why our 36 paramedics have all been trained to give vaccines, so we're solidifying the workforce. But again, it's one person trying to do the work of a dozen people. So.
Yeah, I think people compare it to, they know that the flu vaccines, yearly flu vaccines are provided through, the town has provided those through the drive-through clinics that you both have participated in, and as far as at Joanne's office, we've done the flu clinic. So this is different, and the flu clinics are under our control once, as far as when we order the vaccine. At this point, it is not under our control.
And remember, with flu clinics, we peel off a lot of people to primary care and pharmacies.
Correct.
So we're looking at, we do 1,500 people in a town-wide flu clinic, a town of 20,000, and if 60% of the people want the vaccine, you're looking at 12,000 people roughly that we're going to have to vaccinate. So again, planning-wise, we're looking at a lot of options, and we have to take our direction from the state, and they're doing it in a phased process. But just let the residents know that we are preparing and forecasting, 2 or 3 months down the line, and patience is the virtue here.
And that's good to reiterate, because I know that as the COVID group here, we're continually talking about that and planning as far as, that would be a backup. So there's always a backup plan being made in case we are brought to the forefront to deliver the product at that point. So anything you want to add on that, Chip, too, because you're highly involved and...
No, I just think that, the first responders getting the vaccine are really the ones that are in the front line here. I was driving home the other night, and I was going down one of the streets in my neighborhood, and 3 of JJ's guys were standing at the front door in full PPE, and it was a classic COVID case. So it's here in town, and these folks are dealing with it, like, in depth and right up front. So it's nice to see that they have the opportunity to be protected so they can continue to protect us, because it's really been, they've been doing a lot for the last 8 months.
Yep, agreed. So, and it's made its way here, and it's exciting to move on it also. So, again, let's reiterate that, phase 2, have some patience. We will get to that point. Information will be provided. At this point, at mass.gov, info details when I can get a COVID-19 shot. You'll find it on the town's website. The town's Facebook page will be posting that. Just look on mass.gov relative to vaccines, and you'll be able to see the information and how, and be you'll be notified as far as in that website. They'll be updating that on Tuesdays and Thursdays with information regularly. The state has been good about that, so you'll be able to get an understanding where you fit into this process. So anything else we need to cover with regards to that?
Nope, I think we're good.
All right, very good. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Chip,
Thanks,
for sitting with us today to provide that information going into the storm season. And we'll go from there, and we'll see you next week in the next PSA.
Thank you.